What if I told you that a penny from 1970, the kind most people would walk right past, can still hold real stories, hidden details, and surprising value if you know exactly what to look for? Today we're talking about the 1970 D Mint Mark Lincoln penny, a small copper coin that came out of a very important moment in American history. At first glance, it looks ordinary. But once you understand why it was made, how it was produced, and what collectors search for today, this humble cent becomes a lot more interesting. The 1970 D Lincoln penny was struck in the year 1970 at the Denver Mint. The D Mint mark, found just below the date on the front of the coin, tells us exactly where it was made. This penny is part of the Lincoln Cent series that began in 1909 to honor the 100th birthday of Abraham Lincoln. By 1970, the Lincoln penny had already been in circulation for more than 60 years and had become one of the most familiar coins in American pockets. This particular year matters because 1970 sits right on the edge of major change in U.S. coinage. America was dealing with rising metal prices, inflation, and growing costs of production. Just a few years earlier, in 1968, mint marks had returned to coins after being removed during the mid-1960s to discourage hoarding. So by 1970, seeing a D mint mark again felt normal, but it also marked a return to transparency in coin production. The Lincoln penny of 1970 still used the traditional copper-based composition. It was made of 95% copper, with the remaining 5% being zinc and tin. This is important because it was only 12 years later, in 1982, that the U.S. Mint would switch to mostly zinc pennies to save money. That makes every 1970 penny, including the Denver issue, a true copper coin, with real metal weight and a warm reddish tone. When well preserved, on the front of the coin, you see Abraham Lincoln facing to the right. This portrait was designed by Victor David Brenner and had been used since 1909, making it one of the longest-running designs in U.S. coin history. The words "In God We Trust" appear along the top edge, Liberty is to the left, and the date 1970 sits on the right with the small D mint mark just below it. The back of the coin features the Lincoln Memorial, a design introduced in 1959 to mark the 150th anniversary of Lincoln's birth. If you look closely at the memorial, you can actually see a tiny statue of Lincoln seated inside the building. This made the Lincoln cent one of the few U.S. coins at the time to show the same person on both sides. Now here's where things get interesting. The 1970 D penny was produced in very large numbers. The Denver Mint struck over 2 billion of these coins that year. Because of this massive production, the coin is not considered rare in the traditional sense. Many examples still exist today, especially in circulated condition. But rarity in coin collecting is not always about how many were made. It's about condition, quality, and mistakes. Most 1970 D pennies you'll find are worn, dull brown, and worth only 1 or 2 cents. But collectors are always hunting for coins that stand out. High-quality examples that were never used in circulation, especially those with bright red color, can be surprisingly valuable. Copper turns brown over time, so a penny that still has its original red color more than 50 years later is something special. Another reason collectors pay attention to this coin is because of minting errors. Errors happen when something goes wrong during the striking process, and even small mistakes can turn an ordinary penny into a collectible piece. One known error for the 1970 D Lincoln penny is the doubled die obverse. This happens when the die used to strike the coin receives a doubled impression during its creation. The result is slight doubling on letters or numbers, often visible in the date or the words, "In God We Trust." On 1970 D pennies, the doubling is usually subtle, not bold, but experienced collectors know exactly where to look. Other possible errors include off-center strikes, where the design is not properly aligned, and die cracks, which appear as raised lines on the surface of the coin. There are also cases of weak strikes, where parts of the design appear soft or incomplete. These errors are not common, but they do exist, and they can significantly increase a coin's value. So, how valuable can a 1970 D Lincoln penny really be? In circulated condition, it's usually worth just a few cents, mainly for its copper content. But in uncirculated condition, values begin to climb. A clean, red example graded in the mint state range can sell for anywhere from $10 to $50. Depending on eye appeal and quality. At the highest levels, prices go much higher. Some top-grade 1970 D pennies, especially those graded MS-67 red or higher by professional grading services, have sold at auction for over $100, and in rare cases, several $100s. Error coins can bring even more. A genuine double die example or a dramatic off-center strike can easily reach into the hundreds or even thousands, depending on severity and condition. Collectors love real auction stories because they show what's possible. There have been documented sales where a roll of old-looking pennies turned out to include a high-grade 1970 cent that had never circulated. Once graded and authenticated, it sold for far more than anyone expected. These stories keep people searching through old jars, drawers, and inherited collections. Of course, with any valuable coin, the question of authenticity matters. Fortunately, the 1970 Lincoln penny is rarely faked because the base coin itself is common. However, altered coins do exist. Some people try to add or modify mint marks, or exaggerate doubling using tools. To identify a real example, start with the basics. The coin should weigh about 3.11 grams, which is standard for copper pennies of that era. The D mint mark should look natural, with smooth edges and the correct position below the date. If it looks scratched in or oddly shaped, that's a red flag. When checking for doubling, use a magnifying glass and look for true doubling, not machine doubling. True doubling appears as clear separation in the letters or numbers, while machine doubling looks flat and shelf-like. The difference is subtle, but once you see it, you can't unsee it. Professional grading services exist for a reason. If you believe you have a high-grade or error 1970 penny, having it authenticated and graded can protect you from mistakes and give the coin credibility in the collector market. There are also some fun and surprising facts about this coin. Even though it's more than 50 years old, many people still find 1970 pennies in circulation today. That's because copper pennies last a long time and billions were made. Each one has passed through countless hands buying candy, newspapers, coffee, and gas. Another interesting detail is that while the 1970 penny itself is common, the year 1970 is famous among collectors for a different reason. That contrast makes the Denver issue part of a broader collecting story, reminding us that even within the same year, coins can have very different reputations. Collectors today appreciate the 1970 Lincoln penny not because it's flashy, but because it represents the end of an era. It's part of the last generation of traditional copper cents, made before cost-cutting changes reshaped U.S. coinage. It also reflects the craftsmanship of large-scale minting before modern technology took over completely. For new collectors, this coin is approachable. It's affordable, easy to find, and perfect for learning how to grade condition, spot errors, and understand market value. For experienced collectors, high-grade examples and verified errors offer real challenges and real rewards. In the end, the 1970 Lincoln penny teaches us something important. Value isn't always obvious. Sometimes it's hidden in condition, in tiny details, or in the story behind the metal. A coin that looks ordinary today might become tomorrow's favorite discovery. So the next time you see a penny dated 1970 with a small D beneath the year, don't dismiss it too quickly. Take a closer look. That simple copper coin may be carrying history, craftsmanship, and just enough mystery to make it worth your attention. And who knows, the next surprising penny story might begin right in your own hands. Imagine finding a single penny in your pocket that quietly carries nearly 50 years of American history. A coin so common that millions overlooked it, yet so fascinating that collectors still study it closely today. That is the story of the 1975 no-mint mark Lincoln penny. A coin that proves you don't need gold or silver to hold something meaningful, historical, and surprisingly intriguing. The 1975 no-mint mark Lincoln penny is a 1-cent coin produced in the United States during a time of major change. When people talk about a no-mint mark penny, they are referring to a coin struck in Philadelphia, where pennies traditionally did not carry a mint mark at that time. This small detail tells us exactly where the coin was born and places it right at the heart of America's coin-making tradition. To understand this penny, we need to step back to 1975. The United States was still adjusting to the aftermath of the Vietnam War. Inflation was rising, and everyday Americans were feeling the pressure of higher prices. Coinage had already changed a few years earlier, moving away from precious metals to cheaper materials. Pennies were no exception. The 1975 Lincoln cent was made primarily of copper, but not the solid copper of earlier decades. Instead, It was struck from a copper alloy that helped reduce costs while keeping the familiar look and feel Americans recognized. The design of the coin links the present to the past. On the front, you see the familiar portrait of Abraham Lincoln, a design first introduced in 1909 to honor the 100th anniversary of his birth. By 1975, this portrait had already become one of the most recognizable images in American history. Lincoln's calm expression, facing right, symbolized unity, strength, and resilience, values that still resonated deeply during the challenging 1970s. On the back of the coin is the image of the Lincoln Memorial, which replaced the wheat ears design in 1959. This reverse design is full of quiet detail. If you look closely, you can even see the tiny statue of Lincoln seated inside the memorial. It is a reminder that even on a small 1-cent coin, American designers paid close attention to symbolism and craftsmanship. At first glance, the 1975 no-mint mark penny looks ordinary. Millions were struck, and many are still in circulation or sitting in jars and drawers today. But collectors know that the real story often lies in the details. The metal composition, the strike quality, and especially minting errors are what turn an everyday penny into something special. One of the most talked about aspects of the 1975 penny is the possibility of errors. While there is no officially recognized 1975 double-die penny as famous as some other years, collectors have found examples with minor doubling, off-center strikes, and unusual planchet issues. These errors happened during the high-speed minting process, when coins were produced rapidly to meet demand. A slight misalignment or mechanical issue could create a coin that looks just a little different, and that difference is where value can appear. So why would a penny that is not rare in mintage still attract attention? The answer lies in condition and curiosity. A 1975 no-mint mark penny in heavily worn condition is usually worth only its face value. But when you move into higher grades, especially coins that were carefully preserved, values begin to rise. Coins that appear almost untouched, with full original luster and sharp details, are far harder to find than people expect. Collectors often turn to professional grading services to evaluate these coins. A 1975 no-mint mark penny graded in extremely high condition, such as mint state 66 or higher, can sell for a surprising amount. At major coin auctions, top-quality examples have sold for several $100s. These prices are not about rarity in numbers, but rarity in perfection. There have been documented auction results where pristine 1975 Philadelphia pennies brought strong interest. In one notable case, a near-flawless example graded by a major service sold for over $300, simply because so few coins from that year survived in such exceptional condition. For collectors, it is proof that even modern-era pennies can become valuable when preserved at the highest level. Identifying a genuine 1975 no-mint mark Lincoln penny is straightforward if you know what to look for. First, check the date on the front of the coin. It should clearly read 1975. Next, look just below the date. If there is no letter like D or S, that confirms it was struck in Philadelphia. The weight should be around 3.11 grams, and the color should show a copper tone, not the bright zinc look of newer pennies. Be cautious of altered coins. Some people try to remove mint marks from other pennies to make them appear more desirable. Under magnification, these alterations often leave tool marks or an unnatural surface. A real no-mint mark penny will have a smooth, natural area where no letter was ever placed. Another tip is sound and feel. Copper alloy pennies from the 1970s have a slightly different ring and weight compared to modern zinc cents. While this is subtle, experienced collectors can often tell the difference quickly. There are also some fun and surprising facts about the 1975 penny. During that year, the U.S. Mint produced over 5 billion pennies across all mints. That massive number reflects how important small change still was in everyday life. Vending machines, payphones, and newspaper boxes all relied on coins like the penny, making it an essential part of daily transactions. Another interesting detail is that 1975 pennies were among the last before major debates about eliminating the penny gained serious attention. Rising copper prices and production costs were already causing concern, setting the stage for future changes in coin composition and policy discussions that continue even today. Collectors love the 1975 no-mint mark Lincoln penny not because it is flashy or rare by default, but because it represents a moment in time. It is a snapshot of America in the mid-1970s, captured in copper. For beginners, it is an affordable entry point into coin collecting. For advanced collectors, it is a challenge to find the perfect specimen or an unusual error. This coin also reminds collectors that value is not always obvious. Sometimes, the most common objects hide the most interesting stories. A penny you might ignore today could be the very coin that sparks curiosity, research, and a deeper appreciation for history. As you look at your spare change or old coin jars, remember that the 1975 no-mint mark Lincoln penny is more than just 1 cent. It is a piece of American history, shaped by economic change, mass production, and timeless design. And the next time you see one, you might pause for a moment, knowing that even the simplest coin can carry a story worth telling. What if the penny sitting quietly in your change jar right now is more important than you think? Not because it looks flashy, but because of a hidden story most people never notice. Today we're diving into the 1984 no-mint mark Lincoln penny, a small copper coin that passed through millions of hands, yet still manages to surprise collectors decades later. At first glance, it looks ordinary. But when you slow down and really look at it, this penny opens a window into American history, minting mistakes, and the strange ways value can hide in plain sight. The 1984 no-mint mark Lincoln penny is a 1-cent coin produced in the United States during the early 1980s. When a penny has no mint mark, it means it was struck in Philadelphia, which traditionally did not use mint marks on pennies for many years. This coin features the familiar portrait of Abraham Lincoln on the front and the Lincoln Memorial on the back, a design Americans had already been seeing in their pockets for over 2 decades by that time. The year 1984 sits at an interesting moment in American history. The country was deep into the Cold War era, personal computers were just beginning to enter homes, and the U.S. economy was recovering from inflation struggles of the late 1970s. Coins like this penny were part of everyday life, quietly supporting commerce while reflecting the technology and decisions of the time. The Lincoln penny itself has a long story. It was first introduced in 1909 to honor the 100th birthday of Abraham Lincoln, making it the first circulating U.S. coin to feature a real person. By 1984, the Lincoln cent was already a national icon, recognized by nearly everyone in the country. The 1984 penny was produced by the United States Mint during a period of major change in coin composition. Just 2 years earlier, in 1982, the Mint shifted pennies from mostly copper to a zinc core with a thin copper coating. This decision was driven by rising copper prices, which made producing solid copper cents too expensive. As a result, the 1984 no-mint mark penny is made primarily of zinc, with about 97.5% zinc and only 2.5% copper on the surface. It weighs approximately 2.5 grams, which is lighter than older copper cents. This change alone makes the 1984 penny part of an important transitional era in U.S. coinage. On the front of the coin, Lincoln faces right, wearing a calm and thoughtful expression. Above his head is the word liberty, while the phrase "In God We Trust" runs along the top edge. The year 1984 appears to the right of Lincoln's portrait. Because there is no mint mark beneath the date, collectors know it came from Philadelphia. On the back, the Lincoln Memorial dominates the design. If you look closely, you can actually see a tiny statue of Lincoln seated inside the memorial, a detail that many people never notice even after years of handling these coins. The words "United States of America" curve along the top. 1 cent sits at the bottom, and "E pluribus unum" appears above the memorial. So why does a penny that was made in huge numbers even matter? In 1984, hundreds of millions of pennies were struck in Philadelphia alone. That means the average 1984 no-mint mark penny you find in circulation is usually worth just 1 cent. But collectors don't only look at how many were made. They look for condition, history, and most importantly, mistakes. One of the biggest reasons collectors talk about the 1984 penny today is because of known minting errors. Errors happen when something goes wrong during the striking process, and in 1984, a few of those mistakes created coins that stand out from the rest. The most famous error associated with 1984 pennies is the doubled ear variety. On these coins, Lincoln's ear appears doubled, as if there is a shadow or extra outline behind it. This is not damage from circulation. It comes from a doubled die, meaning the die used to strike the coin had a slight misalignment during its creation. To the untrained eye, it may look subtle, but to collectors, that doubled ear is a big deal. It turns an ordinary penny into a sought-after variety. High-quality examples of the 1984 doubled ear penny have sold for hundreds, and in some cases thousands of dollars at auction, depending on condition. Condition plays a huge role in value. A worn 1984 penny that's been in circulation for decades is usually worth face value. But a coin in uncirculated condition, meaning it shows no signs of wear and still has its original mint luster, can be worth significantly more, even without an error. Professional coin grading services evaluate coins on a scale, carefully examining surface quality, strike sharpness, and overall appearance. A perfectly preserved 1984 no-mint mark penny is rare, not because it wasn't made in large numbers, but because most were used heavily in everyday transactions. Real auction results help show the difference condition and errors can make. Ordinary, uncirculated 1984 pennies might sell for a few dollars. But confirmed doubled ear varieties in top condition have been sold by major auction houses for impressive prices, sometimes reaching four figures. These are real sales, driven by real collector demand. If you're wondering how to tell whether you have a valuable 1984 penny, the first step is careful inspection. Use a magnifying glass or a coin loupe. Look closely at Lincoln's ear. If you see clear doubling that looks part of the design, not damage, that's a good sign. Also check the date and lettering for any unusual doubling or distortion. Weight is another helpful clue. A genuine 1984 zinc penny should weigh about 2.5 grams. A significantly different weight could indicate damage, alteration, or in rare cases, a wrong planchet error. However, wrong planchet errors are extremely rare and should be authenticated by professionals. Fake error coins do exist. Some people attempt to create the appearance of doubling by carving or damaging coins. Real double die errors have smooth, rounded edges that match the original design. Damage usually looks rough, uneven, or sharp. When in doubt, professional authentication is always recommended. One surprising fact about the 1984 penny is how many people have likely spent valuable varieties without ever realizing it. Because pennies are often overlooked, error coins can sit unnoticed in jars, drawers, and collections for years. Another fun detail is that the Lincoln Memorial design, which appears on the 1984 penny, was replaced in 2009 by a series of special reverse designs and later by the Union Shield. This means the 1984 penny represents the later years of a classic design that many collectors feel nostalgic about. Collectors today love the 1984 no-mint mark penny not because it's flashy, but because it rewards patience and knowledge. It's a reminder that rarity isn't always obvious. Sometimes, value hides in small details, visible only to those willing to look closely. For new collectors, this penny is also appealing because it's affordable to search for. You don't need expensive equipment or rare access. You can check your spare change, coin rolls from banks, or old collections passed down through families. The 1984 no-mint mark Lincoln penny tells a quiet story about American life, manufacturing changes, and the human errors that turn ordinary objects into collectibles. It shows how even the smallest coin can carry history, craftsmanship, and surprise. The next time you see a penny dated 1984, don't rush to spend it. Hold it up to the light. Look closely at Lincoln's ear. Think about where that coin has been and how many hands it passed through. Because sometimes, the most interesting treasures aren't locked away in vaults. They're hiding in plain sight, waiting for someone curious enough to notice. Imagine finding a penny in your pocket that looks completely ordinary, yet quietly carries a story of American history, hidden details, and the possibility of being worth far more than 1 cent. Today, we're diving into one of the most overlooked coins of the modern era, the 1985 D-Mint mark Lincoln penny, a coin that millions have held, but very few have truly understood. This coin is part of the long-running Lincoln Cent series, one of the most familiar coins ever produced in the United States. The 1985 D penny was struck at the Denver Mint, and the small letter D below the date tells us exactly where it was made. At first glance, it looks just like countless other pennies from the 1980s, but once you slow down and really examine it, this coin begins to reveal why collectors still pay attention to it decades later. To understand this penny, we need to go back to the year 1985. America was in the middle of a rapidly changing decade. Technology was advancing, the economy was shifting, and everyday life was becoming faster and more modern. The U.S. Mint was producing billions of coins each year to keep up with demand, and the Lincoln penny remained a symbol of stability and tradition in American currency. The 1985 D penny was created not to be rare or special at the time, but to serve as reliable pocket change for a growing nation. The design of the coin connects directly to American history. On the front is the familiar portrait of Abraham Lincoln, a design first introduced in 1909 to honor the 100th anniversary of his birth. Lincoln's image was chosen to represent unity, honesty, and perseverance, values that resonated strongly with the American public. By 1985, this portrait had already appeared on pennies for more than 75 years, making it one of the longest-running designs in U.S. coinage history. The back of the 1985 penny features the Lincoln Memorial, a design introduced in 1959. If you look closely, you can actually see a tiny statue of Lincoln seated inside the memorial, making this one of the few U.S. coins to show the same person on both sides. This detail is often missed, especially on worn coins, but it's one of the small artistic touches that collectors appreciate. Now let's talk about what this penny is made of, because this is where things get interesting. Before 1982, U.S. pennies were made mostly of copper. Rising metal costs forced a change, and by 1985, the penny was made from zinc with a thin copper coating. This means the coin looks like copper, but underneath it's mostly zinc. This shift makes pennies from different eras feel and sound slightly different, and it also affects how they age over time. Most 1985 D pennies are very common. The Denver Mint produced billions of them, so finding one in everyday circulation is not unusual. But value in coin collecting is not always about how many were made. Sometimes it's about condition, and sometimes it's about mistakes. And this is where the 1985 D penny starts to stand out. Errors and varieties are the hidden gems of modern coin collecting. During the minting process, mistakes can happen, and when they do, those coins often become desirable to collectors. Some 1985 D pennies were struck off-center, meaning the design is not properly aligned. Others show weak strikes, missing details, or unusual textures. There are also examples with repunched mint marks, where the D was stamped more than once, creating a doubled appearance. Another type of error collectors look for is doubling in the lettering or numbers. While dramatic double die varieties are rare for this year, minor doubling can still add interest and value, especially when clearly visible under magnification. These small imperfections turn an ordinary penny into a conversation piece and sometimes into a valuable collectible. Condition plays a huge role in value as well. Most 1985 D pennies found in circulation today are worn, scratched, or discolored. However, coins that were saved early and kept in excellent condition can be surprisingly valuable. A bright, sharply struck example with no wear can be worth many times its face value, especially if it has never been circulated. Certified coins graded by professional services often bring the highest prices. High-grade examples with strong luster and clean surfaces have sold for impressive amounts compared to their 1-cent face value. While most sell for a few dollars, top-condition coins have reached much higher prices at auction, especially when collectors compete for the finest known examples. Collectors also enjoy the challenge of finding these coins themselves. There is something exciting about checking pocket change or old jars of pennies, knowing that a single coin could be different from the rest. The 1985 D penny is popular because it's accessible. You don't need a fortune to start looking, just patience and a careful eye. Of course, with popularity comes the risk of confusion or deception. Identifying a genuine 1985 D penny is straightforward if you know what to look for. The date should read 1985, and the mint mark D should appear just below the date on the front of the coin. The metal should have a copper color, but if the coin is damaged, you might see gray zinc underneath. Weight is another clue. As these pennies are lighter than older copper ones, be cautious of altered coins. Some people try to add or modify mint marks to make a coin appear more valuable than it is. Under magnification, fake mint marks often look uneven or poorly attached. A genuine mint mark will be cleanly integrated into the coin surface. There are also fun and surprising facts about this penny that many people don't realize. For example, because the coin is copper-plated zinc, it can react differently to environmental conditions than older pennies. Exposure to moisture can cause bubbling or peeling of the copper layer, creating unusual textures that some people mistake for errors. Another interesting detail is how this penny reflects its time period. The 1980s were a turning point in U.S. coin production, with new materials and massive output. The 1985 D penny represents a balance between tradition and modern manufacturing, carrying a historic design into a new era. Collectors today appreciate this coin not because it's rare in the traditional sense, but because it tells a complete story. It connects Abraham Lincoln's legacy to late 20th century America. It shows how economic pressures can change even the smallest details of everyday life. And it reminds us that valuable discoveries don't always come from ancient coins or gold treasures. Sometimes they come from something as simple as a penny. As more people become interested in coin collecting, modern issues like the 1985 D penny are gaining renewed attention. They're affordable, easy to find, and full of potential surprises. For beginners, this coin is often a gateway into the hobby. For experienced collectors, it's a reminder that even common coins deserve a closer look. So the next time you see a 1985 D Lincoln penny, don't dismiss it too quickly. Turn it over in your hand. Look closely at the details. Think about where it's been and what it represents. That small coin may not make you rich overnight, but it just might spark a deeper curiosity about the hidden stories in your pocket change. And sometimes that curiosity is worth far more than 1 cent. What if the penny sitting unnoticed in a drawer or jar right now has a story far bigger than its 1 cent face value? A story tied to American history, everyday life in the early 1990s, and a few rare surprises that collectors quietly hunt for. The coin we are talking about today is the 1991 no-mint mark Lincoln penny. At first glance, it looks like an ordinary cent, the kind millions of Americans handled without a second thought. But behind that familiar copper color is a fascinating blend of history, design, and small details that can make a huge difference to collectors. This penny was issued in 1991 by the United States Mint. When a Lincoln cent has no mint mark, it means it was struck in Philadelphia, the main minting facility that has produced billions of coins since the nation's earliest days. In 1991, Philadelphia was still turning out massive quantities of pennies to keep up with daily commerce, and most people never imagined any of them would become collectible. To understand why this coin exists, we need to step back into the early 1990s. The United States was in a period of transition. The Cold War had just ended, technology was rapidly changing, and the economy was adjusting after the late 1980s. Coins like the 1991 Lincoln penny were made for one simple purpose: to be used. They paid for coffee, newspapers, parking meters, and candy bars. No one at the time was setting them aside as future treasures. The Lincoln penny itself has a much older history. The portrait on the front shows Abraham Lincoln, first introduced on the cent in 1909 to honor the 100th anniversary of his birth. This made the Lincoln cent the first regular U.S. coin to feature a real historical person instead of a symbolic figure. By 1991, Americans had been seeing Lincoln's face on pennies for over 80 years, making it one of the most familiar images in the country. The design on the front of the coin was created by Victor David Brenner, a sculptor whose initials, VDB, caused controversy when they first appeared on the 1909 cents. Although those initials are no longer visible on modern pennies like the 1991 issue, Brenner's basic design still lives on, showing Lincoln in a calm, thoughtful profile facing right. On the back of the 1991 penny, you will find the Lincoln Memorial. This reverse design was introduced in 1959 to mark 150 years since Lincoln's birth. The building shown is the real Lincoln Memorial in Washington, D.C., and if you look very closely at the coin, you can actually see a tiny seated statue of Lincoln inside the memorial. That small detail is one of the reasons many people find the design so interesting. In terms of metal, the 1991 no-mint mark penny is not solid copper like older cents from before 1982. Instead, it is made of a zinc core with a thin copper coating. This change was made to reduce costs as copper prices rose. The coin weighs about 2.5 grams and has a smooth edge, just like modern pennies you see today. So, with millions of these coins produced, why does anyone care about a 1991 no-mint mark penny? The answer lies in condition, rarity within the ordinary, and occasional minting errors. Most 1991 pennies are only worth face value, 1 cent. But collectors are always searching for examples that stand out. Condition is one of the biggest factors. A penny that's circulated for years will show scratches, dull surfaces, and worn details. But a 1991 penny that was never used, often called an uncirculated coin, can look almost brand new. These coins were usually taken directly from rolls or sets and carefully stored. In high grades, where the coin has sharp details and bright original luster, the value can rise significantly. Another factor is errors. Coin errors happen when something goes wrong during the minting process. These mistakes are usually caught and corrected, but a small number escape into circulation. For the 1991 Lincoln penny, collectors look for errors such as off-center strikes, double details, or die cracks. One particularly interesting error is a double die, where parts of the design appear doubled because the die used to strike the coin was misaligned during production. Although major double die varieties for 1991 are not as famous as some earlier years, minor doubling and other errors do exist. When found and verified, these error coins can be worth far more than 1 cent, sometimes selling for tens or even hundreds of dollars depending on the type and severity of the mistake. Real auction examples help put this into perspective. A typical circulated 1991 no-mint mark penny might be worth exactly 1 cent. An uncirculated example in average condition might sell for a few cents to $1. However, a high-grade uncirculated coin, graded by a professional service and showing strong luster with no visible marks, has sold at auction for $20, $30, or more. Error coins, especially dramatic ones, can sell for even higher prices when collectors compete for them. Collectors love these stories because they remind us that value is not always obvious. 2 pennies from the same year can look similar at first glance, yet one might be worth a few cents while another is worth many times that amount. Identifying a real 1991 no-mint mark Lincoln penny is fairly simple. First, check the date on the front. It should clearly read 1991. Next, look just below the date. If there is no letter like D or S, then it was made in Philadelphia and qualifies as a no-mint mark coin. The surface should show the familiar copper color, and the design details should match known genuine examples. Fakes are not common for this particular coin because most examples are low in value. However, altered coins do exist. Some people may try to change dates or remove mint marks from other pennies. Using a magnifying glass, look for signs of tampering such as scratches, unusual textures, or mismatched details. If a coin appears too good to be true, especially if it is being sold as a rare error, it is always wise to have it examined by a professional. One fun fact about the 1991 Lincoln penny is how it represents a specific moment in American life. This coin was in circulation when many people were using payphones, renting movies on VHS tapes, and listening to music on cassette players. It quietly passed through countless hands during a time of everyday routines that now feel nostalgic. Another interesting detail is that even though the penny has lost purchasing power over the years, it remains one of the most collected U.S. coins. People of all ages save Lincoln cents, often starting with the ones they find in pocket change. The 1991 penny is often part of childhood collections, making it emotionally meaningful as well as historically interesting. Collectors today appreciate the 1991 no-mint mark penny not because it is famously rare, but because it shows how ordinary objects can become special over time. It is a reminder that collecting is not only about extreme rarity or high prices. It is also about curiosity, history, and the joy of discovering something familiar in a new way. For many collectors, finding a clean, well-preserved 1991 penny feels like rescuing a small piece of the past. Each one has its own journey, from the minting press in Philadelphia to a wallet, a cash register, or a jar at home. So the next time you see a penny dated 1991 with no mint mark, take a moment to really look at it. Notice the details, the condition, and the history it carries. While most of them will never be worth a fortune, a few special examples prove that even the most ordinary coin can hold surprising value. And that is what makes coin collecting so exciting. Hidden in plain sight, among loose change and forgotten drawers, history is still waiting to be noticed. Who knows? The next penny you pick up might not just be spare change, but a quiet survivor of America's everyday past, still telling its story 1 cent at a time. Imagine finding a penny in your pocket that looks completely ordinary, yet could tell a hidden story about American history, modern minting technology, and why collectors sometimes pay far more than 1 cent for something most people ignore every day. That is exactly the mystery behind the 2003 no-mint mark Lincoln penny, a coin that quietly passed through millions of hands while hiding details that still fascinate collectors today. The 2003 no-mint mark Lincoln penny is a United States 1-cent coin struck for everyday use. At first glance, it looks like a normal modern penny, the kind you might have spent on candy or dropped into a tip jar without a second thought. But coins are time capsules, and this penny captures a very specific moment in American history, when tradition and modern manufacturing met in a subtle but meaningful way. To understand this coin, we need to go back to the year 2003. The United States was moving through a new era, shaped by rapid technological change, economic shifts, and a growing interest in collectibles. The penny was still a vital part of daily transactions, even as debates about its usefulness were already beginning. That year, billions of Lincoln cents were produced to keep up with demand across the country. Some of those pennies were made without a mint mark, meaning they were struck at the main production facility rather than branch mints. The Lincoln penny itself has a long and respected history. First introduced in 1909 to honor the 100th birthday of Abraham Lincoln, it became the first regularly circulating U.S. coin to feature a real person. By 2003, Lincoln had already appeared on the penny for nearly a century, making him one of the most enduring figures in American coinage. This long tradition adds emotional and historical weight even to modern issues like the 2003 penny. In 2003, the penny still carried the familiar design introduced in 1959. On the front, Lincoln's portrait faces right, calm and dignified. The words "In God We Trust" appear above his head, with "Liberty" to the left and the year 2003 to the right. If there is no letter under the date, that is what collectors call no mint mark. On the back, the Lincoln Memorial stands centered, with the words "United States of America" and 1 cent. If you look closely, you can even see a tiny statue of Lincoln inside the memorial, a detail many people never notice. The absence of a mint mark is not a mistake. It simply means the coin was struck at the primary mint, which traditionally did not use a mint mark on pennies for many years. These coins were produced by the United States Mint, which has been responsible for making America's circulating coins since the late 1700s. In 2003, the Mint was producing pennies using highly advanced machines capable of striking thousands of coins per minute with incredible precision. The metal composition of the 2003 Lincoln penny is another interesting detail. Unlike older pennies made mostly of copper, this coin is made from zinc with a thin copper coating. This change happened in the early 1980s to reduce production costs as copper prices rose. As a result, the 2003 penny weighs about 2.5 grams and has a bright copper color that can sometimes fool people into thinking it is solid copper, even though it is not. So why would a coin made in such large numbers be considered rare or valuable? The answer lies in condition, errors, and collector demand. Most 2003 no-mint mark pennies are worth exactly 1 cent in everyday condition. However, coins that were never circulated and remain in perfect or near-perfect condition can be worth significantly more. Collectors grade coins on a scale that measures wear, shine, and sharpness of detail. A flawless example can stand out among millions of worn coins. Mint errors are where things get truly exciting. During the fast-paced production process, mistakes can happen. Some 2003 no-mint mark pennies were struck with off-center designs, weak strikes, or doubling in the lettering. A double die error, where parts of the design appear slightly doubled, can dramatically increase a coin's value. These errors are not common, and that scarcity is what drives collector interest. There have been real-world examples that show how much these pennies can sell for. High-grade 2003 no-mint mark Lincoln pennies, especially those graded by professional services, have sold at auctions for prices far above face value. Some pristine examples have sold for tens of dollars, while rare error coins have reached into the hundreds. While these amounts may not sound life-changing, it is remarkable for a coin that most people overlook completely. Identifying a genuine 2003 no-mint mark penny is simple if you know what to look for. First, check the date on the front. It should clearly read 2003. Then look just below the date. If there is no letter, such as a D or an S, then you have a no-mint mark coin. The coin should feel light but solid, with a smooth edge and even coloring. Be cautious of altered coins, where someone may have removed a mint mark from another penny. Under magnification, Tampering often leaves scratches or unnatural surfaces. Counterfeits of modern pennies are rare, but altered coins do exist. A genuine coin will have sharp details and consistent design elements. The portrait of Lincoln should look natural, not blurred or misshapen. The lettering should be clean and evenly spaced. If something looks off, collectors recommend comparing it to another known genuine penny from the same year. There are also some fun and surprising facts about the 2003 Lincoln penny. This was one of the final years before major design changes were announced. Just a few years later, the reverse of the penny would be redesigned to mark the bicentennial of Lincoln's birth. That makes the 2003 issue part of the final chapter of the classic Lincoln Memorial design era, which adds a layer of nostalgia for many collectors. Another interesting detail is how many of these pennies were saved by people who thought they might become valuable someday. Rolls of uncirculated 2003 pennies still appear in collections, sometimes forgotten in drawers or boxes for years. When rediscovered, they offer a snapshot of what brand new pennies looked like at the start of the 21st century. Collectors today love the 2003 no-mint mark Lincoln penny not because it is instantly rare, but because it represents accessibility. Anyone can find one. You do not need to be wealthy or experienced to start collecting. This coin invites curiosity and teaches people how value is created through history, condition, and small variations. It is often a gateway coin that inspires people to look more closely at the change they carry every day. For many collectors, the joy comes from the hunt. Searching through rolls of pennies, hoping to spot a flawless example or a rare error, turns an ordinary activity into a treasure hunt. The 2003 no-mint mark penny fits perfectly into that experience because it is common enough to find, yet interesting enough to study. As we come to the end of this story, remember that the true value of the 2003 no-mint mark Lincoln penny is not just measured in dollars. It is measured in the history it carries, the details it reveals, and the curiosity it sparks. The next time you see a penny dated 2003, pause for a moment and take a closer look. You might be holding a small piece of modern American history, quietly waiting to be noticed. Most people have seen this coin and spent it without a second thought, but what if one ordinary-looking penny from 2007 could tell a story about American history, modern coin collecting, and hidden value that almost no one notices until it's too late? The 2007 D-Mint mark Lincoln penny is one of those coins that feels familiar the moment you see it. It's small, copper-colored, and easy to ignore. Yet behind that simple appearance is a fascinating chapter in the long life of the Lincoln cent, a coin that has been part of everyday American life for more than a century. This penny was made in 2007 and carries a small letter D just below the date. That single letter tells us it was struck at the Denver Mint, one of the most important coin-producing facilities in the United States. In 2007, millions upon millions of Lincoln pennies were still being produced every year, flowing into pockets, jars, and cash registers across the country. To understand this coin, it helps to step back and look at the moment in time when it was created. The year 2007 was the final full year before a major change in the Lincoln cent series. In 2009, special designs would be introduced to celebrate Abraham Lincoln's 200th birthday and the cent's 100th anniversary. That makes 2007 part of the closing chapter of a long design era, one that many collectors now look back on with appreciation. The Lincoln penny itself was first introduced in 1909 to honor the 100th anniversary of Abraham Lincoln's birth. It was a groundbreaking decision because it was the first regular U.S. coin to feature a real person. By 2007, Lincoln's portrait had been on the penny for nearly a century, making it one of the most recognizable images in American money. The face you see on the 2007 D penny is the familiar profile of Lincoln, calm and dignified, looking to the right, with the words "In God We Trust" above his head. The design on the back of the coin is just as iconic. The Lincoln Memorial appears centered, with its tall columns carefully engraved. If you look closely, you can even see a tiny seated statue of Lincoln inside the memorial, a detail that many people never notice. This reverse design had been used since 1959, and by 2007 it had become deeply associated with American pocket change. In terms of metal, the 2007 D Lincoln penny is not made from pure copper like older cents. Instead, it has a core of zinc with a thin copper coating. This change was made in the early 1980s to reduce production costs. Even so, The coin still has that classic copper look and feel, which often leads people to assume it's made of solid copper when it isn't. So what makes the 2007 D penny interesting to collectors if so many were made? The answer lies in condition, errors, and timing. While these coins are common in everyday circulated condition, finding one in pristine shape is much harder than most people expect. Pennies are easily scratched, stained, and worn. A coin that has never been circulated, with full shine and sharp details, stands out immediately. Collectors pay special attention to coins graded as mint state, especially those with high grades. A 2007 D penny that looks brand new, with no visible marks and strong luster, can be worth significantly more than 1 cent. While it won't make you rich overnight, it can still surprise people who assumed modern pennies have no value at all. Errors are another reason this coin gets attention. During the minting process, small mistakes sometimes occur. These can include off-center strikes, where the design is not perfectly centered, or double details, where parts of the lettering or date appear slightly doubled. There are also cases of die cracks or unusual surface textures. While most 2007 D pennies are perfectly normal, error coins do exist, and those are the pieces collectors actively hunt for. Some error examples have sold for impressive prices compared to their face value. High-quality error coins from this year have appeared at auctions and online sales, sometimes bringing tens or even hundreds of dollars, depending on the type and severity of the error. That kind of value from a single penny is enough to make people look twice at their spare change. To identify a genuine 2007 D Lincoln penny, the first thing to check is the date and mint mark. The date should clearly read 2007, and just below it you should see the letter D. The details on Lincoln's face and the lettering should be sharp and clean, not blurry or misshapen. On the reverse, the Lincoln Memorial should have well-defined columns and clear text. Fakes of modern pennies are rare because the coin itself has low face value, but altered coins do exist. Some people try to modify dates or add fake errors. A real error usually shows natural metal flow and consistent wear patterns, while a fake often looks forced or uneven. When in doubt, serious collectors rely on professional coin grading services to confirm authenticity and condition. One surprising fact about the 2007 D penny is how it represents the end of an era without most people realizing it at the time. Just 2 years later, the familiar Lincoln Memorial would disappear from the back of the penny, replaced by special designs and eventually a new permanent reverse. That makes coins like this a snapshot of the final years of a classic American design. Another fun detail is how many of these coins are still hiding in plain sight. Because they are relatively recent, they often sit unnoticed in rolls, jars, and old piggy banks. Unlike much older coins, they haven't all been pulled out and saved yet. That means patient collectors still have a chance to find high-quality examples without paying premium prices. Collectors today appreciate the 2007 D Lincoln penny not because it is incredibly rare, but because it tells a quiet story. It represents everyday American life in the early 2000s, a time before major design changes and before many people paid attention to modern coin collecting. It also reminds collectors that value isn't always about age. Sometimes it's about condition, timing, and small details others overlook. For new collectors, this coin is often a gateway. It's affordable, easy to find, and connected to a long, respected tradition. For experienced collectors, it offers the challenge of finding the best possible example or a legitimate mint error. Either way, it earns its place in collections across the country, so the next time you come across a 2007 D Mint Mark Lincoln penny, pause for a moment before you spend it. Look closely at the shine, the details, and that small letter beneath the date. You might be holding a tiny piece of American history from the final days of a classic design, quietly waiting to be noticed. And sometimes the most interesting treasures are the ones that have been in front of us all along, hiding in the simplest form of money we use every day. Imagine finding a penny in your pocket that looks completely ordinary, yet quietly carries a story tied to American history, modern minting, and a few surprises that most people never notice. What if that everyday coin from 2014 could tell you more than a century of stories in just 1 cent? The 2014 No Mint Mark Lincoln penny is one of those coins most people overlook. Feels common, spends easily, and yet it represents a very specific place, time, and moment in U.S. coin history. This penny was struck in Philadelphia, the historic home of American coinage, and like all Philadelphia pennies made for circulation that year, it carries no mint mark beneath the date. That missing letter is not a mistake. It is a tradition that goes back generations, and it is the first clue to understanding why this coin matters. To appreciate this penny, you have to step back and look at why it exists at all. The Lincoln cent was first introduced in 1909 to honor the 100th anniversary of the birth of Abraham Lincoln. It was the first regularly circulating U.S. coin to feature a real historical person. By 2014, this design had already been part of American life for more than a century. The version made that year continues that legacy, connecting modern Americans to a coin their grandparents and great-grandparents once used every day. In 2014, the United States was still producing billions of 1-cent coins to meet everyday demand. The job of making most of those pennies fell to the United States Mint, with facilities in different cities sharing the workload. Philadelphia struck a massive number of cents that year, and true to tradition, those coins left the mint without a P mint mark. That absence is what collectors mean when they say, no mint mark. It does not make the coin automatically rare, but it does make it identifiable. The design of the 2014 Lincoln penny is familiar yet full of detail. On the front, Lincoln's portrait faces right, a design originally created by Victor David Brenner in 1909 and refined over time. You can see the words "In God We Trust" along the top, "Liberty" to the left, and the date 2014 to the right. Beneath the date, there is no letter. That blank space tells you this penny was struck in Philadelphia. Flip the coin over, and you see the Union Shield design, which was introduced just a few years earlier in 2010. 13 vertical stripes represent the original states, bound together by a horizontal bar, symbolizing unity and strength. The words 1 cent and United States of America are boldly displayed, while the motto E pluribus unum sits above the shield. This modern reverse design makes the 2014 penny visually different from older Lincoln cents with wheat stalks or the Lincoln Memorial on the back. The metal composition of the 2014 no mint mark penny is another important detail. Although it looks copper, it is actually made of 97.5% zinc, with a thin copper coating on the outside. This change happened back in 1982, when rising copper prices made solid copper pennies too expensive to produce. By 2014, this zinc core had become standard, meaning the coin's value comes from its condition and rarity, not from its metal content. So why do people even talk about the value of a 2014 penny if so many were made? The answer lies in condition, errors, and collector interest. While most circulated examples are worth exactly 1 cent, pennies that were never used, never scratched, and never worn can be worth more. Collectors call these coins uncirculated, and they look almost exactly as they did the day they left the mint. In addition to condition, minting errors play a huge role in value. Some 2014 no mint mark Lincoln pennies were struck with mistakes that slipped past quality control. These errors can include off-center strikes, where the design is not perfectly aligned, or die cracks, which appear as raised lines caused by damaged dies. There are also double die errors, where parts of the design appear doubled due to a misalignment during the minting process. These error coins are far less common and can attract serious attention from collectors. Real auction results show how much condition and errors matter. A standard 2014 no mint mark penny in average circulated condition usually sells for just a few cents, if it sells at all. But uncirculated examples graded by professional services have sold for several dollars. In higher grades, especially those labeled as nearly perfect, prices can climb into the double digits. Error coins are where things get more exciting. A clearly visible double die or dramatic off-center strike from 2014 has sold for anywhere from $20 to over $100, depending on the error and the coin's overall appearance. Identifying a real 2014 no mint mark Lincoln penny is simple, but it requires attention. First, check the date. It must read 2014. Next, look directly under the date. If there is no D or S, it was struck in Philadelphia. Then examine the details. Genuine coins will have sharp lettering, clear design elements, and a consistent copper color. Be cautious of altered coins, where someone may have removed a mint mark from a Denver coin to make it appear more interesting. Under magnification, such alterations often show scratches or unnatural smoothness where the mint mark once was. Weight is another clue. A genuine 2014 penny should weigh about 2.5 grams. Significant differences could indicate damage, corrosion, or tampering. For valuable examples, especially error coins, professional grading is the safest way to confirm authenticity and value. There are also some fun and surprising facts about the 2014 Lincoln penny that most people never hear. Even though it is considered modern, it already represents a chapter in U.S. coin design history. The Union Shield reverse is still relatively new compared to the decades-long run of the Lincoln Memorial design. That means collectors today are watching how these modern pennies age in popularity over time. Another interesting detail is how many of these pennies are still sitting in jars, drawers, and piggy banks across the country. Because people often save pennies without thinking about dates, high-quality examples can still be found in everyday change. This makes searching for them feel like a small treasure hunt, even if the reward is modest. Collectors love the 2014 no-mint mark Lincoln penny not because it is extremely rare, but because it represents accessible collecting. It is a coin almost anyone can find, study, and understand. For beginners, it is a perfect introduction to learning about mint marks, coin condition, and errors. For experienced collectors, it offers a modern benchmark, a way to compare quality and strike precision with earlier decades. This penny also reminds collectors that value is not always about age. A coin does not need to be 100 years old to be interesting. Sometimes the story behind how it was made, where it was made, and what went wrong during production is just as compelling. As you look at a 2014 no-mint mark Lincoln penny now, it may never feel quite as ordinary again. It is a small piece of metal that connects modern America to a tradition that began more than a century ago. It carries Lincoln's image, a symbol of unity on its reverse, and the quiet signature of Philadelphia in the form of a missing letter. So the next time you receive change and spot a 2014 penny with no mint mark, pause for a moment. Look closer. You might be holding a coin that is worth only a cent today, but rich in history, design, and hidden possibilities. And sometimes, the most interesting stories in coin collecting begin with the coins we almost ignore. Imagine pulling a penny from your pocket that looks completely ordinary, but quietly carries a story of modern history, hidden details, and the possibility of surprising value. Most people would spend it without a second thought. But today, that humble coin is our main character, the 2015 no-mint mark Lincoln penny, a coin that proves even recent change can hold secrets worth knowing. The 2015 no-mint mark Lincoln penny is a United States 1-cent coin that many Americans have handled, saved, or spent without realizing what it represents. Unlike older rare coins that feel distant in time, this penny belongs to the modern era. It connects the past, the present, and the everyday lives of millions of people who still use cash. And that is exactly what makes it so fascinating. In 2015, the United States was moving deeper into a digital age. Credit cards, online payments, and mobile wallets were becoming more common. Yet the penny remained part of daily life. That year, millions of 1-cent coins were produced to meet demand for circulation. The no-mint mark version of the 2015 Lincoln penny was struck at the United States Mint facility in Philadelphia. Coins made there traditionally do not carry a mint mark, which is why this penny appears blank under the date. The Lincoln penny itself has a long and meaningful history. It was first introduced in 1909 to honor the 100th birthday of Abraham Lincoln, making it the first regular U.S. coin to feature a real person. Over a century later, Lincoln's image continues to appear on the penny, symbolizing unity, leadership, and American values. The 2015 issue carries that same tradition forward into the modern age. On the front of the 2015 no-mint mark Lincoln penny, you see a right-facing portrait of Lincoln. The design is clean, sharp, and familiar. Above his head is the word liberty, a powerful reminder of the nation's founding principles. To the right is the date, 2015, and just below it is the absence of a mint mark, which tells us it was struck in Philadelphia. At the bottom, the phrase "In God We Trust" completes the design, tying the coin to decades of American history. Turn the coin over, and you see the Union Shield design, which replaced the Lincoln Memorial in 2010. The shield represents Lincoln's preservation of the United States as one nation, divided into many states but held together as one whole. A banner across the shield reads, "E pluribus unum," meaning out of many one. This modern reverse design makes the 2015 penny instantly recognizable as part of the newer generation of Lincoln cents. The metal composition of the 2015 Lincoln penny is another interesting detail. Unlike very old pennies made mostly of copper, this coin is made of zinc with a thin copper coating. Specifically, it contains 97.5% zinc and 2.5% copper. This change in metal, introduced in the early 1980s, was done to reduce production costs. While it means the coin is not valuable for its metal alone, it plays a big role in how collectors judge condition and preservation. So why would anyone care about a penny from 2015? The answer lies in condition, rarity within perfection, and minting errors. While millions of these pennies were made, only a tiny fraction exist in flawless condition. Coins that were never circulated, never scratched, and never damaged are extremely difficult to find. Collectors often look for coins graded as MS67, MS68 or higher, meaning they are nearly perfect. Errors are where the story gets even more exciting. Some 2015 no-mint Mark Lincoln pennies left the mint with mistakes that make them stand out. These can include off-center strikes, where the design is not properly aligned, double die errors that cause letters or numbers to appear doubled, or die cracks that leave raised lines across the surface. These errors are not common, and when they appear on modern coins, collectors take notice. There have been real-world examples that show how valuable a 2015 no-mint Mark Lincoln penny can become. In online auctions and collector marketplaces, high-grade examples certified by professional grading services have sold for prices far above face value. While most circulated examples are worth only 1 cent, a pristine uncirculated coin can sell for several dollars. Error coins, depending on the type and severity of the mistake, have sold for tens or even hundreds of dollars. These sales prove that modern coins can still surprise people. Identifying a genuine 2015 no-mint Mark Lincoln penny is not difficult, but knowing what to look for is important. First, check the date on the front to confirm it reads 2015. Then look just below the date. If there is no letter, no D, and no S, you have the Philadelphia version. Next, examine the details closely. Authentic coins will have sharp lettering, a clear portrait, and consistent weight and size. Counterfeit pennies are rare, but altered coins do exist, especially those with added or removed mint marks. A magnifying glass can help you spot unusual tool marks or inconsistencies. One surprising fact about the 2015 penny is how many people unknowingly saved them. Because it is a modern coin, many collectors did not pay attention to it at first. Some people stored rolls directly from banks, hoping future demand would grow. Others found high-quality examples in pocket change and set them aside without realizing how valuable condition can be. This quiet collecting has slowly increased interest over time. Another fun detail is that 2015 pennies often show strong strikes and clean designs compared to some earlier years. Advances in minting technology helped improve consistency. This means that when errors do occur, they stand out more clearly, making them easier to identify and more exciting for collectors. Collectors today love the 2015 no-mint Mark Lincoln penny because it represents modern collecting. It reminds people that you do not need to search centuries-old coins to find something interesting. Even coins from recent years can become desirable if they tell a story, show perfection, or reveal a mistake. For new collectors, this penny is affordable, accessible, and educational. For experienced collectors, it offers the thrill of hunting for rare errors and top-grade examples. The 2015 no-mint Mark Lincoln penny also reflects a changing world. It comes from a time when physical money was slowly being replaced by digital payments, yet the penny continued to circulate. That makes it a snapshot of an era, a small piece of history that fits in the palm of your hand. So the next time you see a penny dated 2015, don't rush to spend it. Take a moment to look closer. Check the date, notice the missing mint mark, and examine the details. What seems ordinary could be something special, or at least something worth appreciating. Coins like the 2015 no-mint Mark Lincoln penny remind us that history is not always locked away in museums. Sometimes it is hiding in plain sight, waiting in a jar, a drawer, or your pocket. And the real question is not whether this penny is rare, but whether you have already held one without ever knowing its story.